The wind on Route Topaz that morning came off the eastern flats like something with a grudge, dry and hot and full of grit, and it pushed the heat shimmer across the boulevard until the road itself seemed to crawl. I have been a bomb disposal instructor for 19 years, and I have seen that kind of wind kill more techs than any wire ever has. It hides the seam of a buried plate. It steals the smell of slurry off a freshly packed device. It dries the sweat off your palms before you can wipe them on your trousers. It makes a man hurry, and hurry on this work is the only sin that costs you everything. I rode in the second MRAP jump seat on what was supposed to be a quiet ride along my last week before retirement, a transition trip to bless a new EOD team and shake hands with a colonel who owed me a beer. Sergeant First Class Mara Voss sat across from me with her helmet in her lap and a thumb-soft notebook open on her thigh. The right side of her jaw carried a slick, pale rope of scar that ran from her ear down under the collar of her plate carrier. The back of her left hand had 3 more, the kind you get when copper wire goes hot under your fingers, and there is nowhere to throw it. "Master Sergeant Pryor," she said, and tapped the notebook. "Tell me again about the secondary on Highway 1, the one with the pressure plate under the goat carcass." I told her. She wrote 3 words. Then she asked me about a Sangan daisy chain from 11 that had taken the legs off a Marine I had trained, and I told her about that one too. In front of us in the lead truck, 4 young infantry squad leaders from a brand new line company were laughing about something I could not hear. I had ridden out of the wire with their captain that morning. He was 28, jaw like a bar of soap, and he had looked Voss up and down at the staging lot and said, loud enough to carry, "Somebody tell EOD to send their real tech, not the one the kids drew on." The lieutenant standing next to him had laughed. The 2 NCOs behind him had laughed. A heavy-shouldered staff sergeant added that he hoped the scars came with a discount. Voss had finished tying down a green Pelican case, stood up, looked at the captain with eyes the color of a wet stone and said, "Copy, sir. You'll get the tech you need." Then she had climbed into my truck without another word and opened her notebook. I knew her file by heart. I had written part of it. But a man who has been mocked his whole life learns when a soldier wants quiet, and Voss wanted quiet. The convoy was 9 vehicles, headed up Route Topaz to relieve a small outpost called Carver's Bridge. Topaz was a 5-kilometer stretch of cracked tarmac running between 2 long berms of dirt pushed up by graders the year before. On the map it looked like a straight, clean line. On the ground it looked like a kill chute. We made it 2 kilometers. The lead MRAP's front right tire went over something that should not have been there, and the world tipped sideways in a flat, hard crack that I felt in my chest before I heard. Dust climbed 40 feet into the sky. The truck slewed off the road, dropped its nose into the berm and stopped. The radio in my truck barked once, then went still, then barked again with a voice I did not recognize. Contact front, lead vehicle hit. Voss closed her notebook. She put it in her left cargo pocket. She put her helmet on. She did all of this the way another woman might tie her shoes. The captain came up on the net next, breathing too fast. EOD, we need a sweep. We have wounded in the lead. We have movement on the south berm." That last part was the part that mattered. Movement on the south berm meant we were not done. Somebody had set this off on purpose and was watching to see what we did next. The textbook play when a convoy is hit on a road like Topaz is to button up, set a cordon, call for a robot, and wait 2 hours. The textbook play on that morning would have cost us the lead crew, the gunner thrown from the turret, and probably the truck behind them. Voss keyed her radio. "Topaz 6 iron latch, casualties first. I'm coming forward on foot. Do not move any vehicle until I clear it. Out." She unlatched the rear door of our MRAP before our driver had stopped rolling. "You stay," she said to me, half over her shoulder, the way you say it to a dog that already knows. I went anyway. 19 years of habit do not unhook because a sergeant tells them to. We stepped out into a wall of dust and that wind. Voss moved up the column the way I teach my students to move, and almost none of them do slow heel, slow toe, eyes sweeping the ground in a 1-meter arc in front of her boots, never lifting her gaze except in 2-second checks to the berms. She carried a long, thin probe in her right hand and her carbine on a single point on her chest, muzzle down. She did not draw the carbine. She did not need to. The infantry would shoot for her if it came to that, and her hands had another job. A round cracked over our heads from the south berm, then another. Then a squad automatic weapon on our side opened up and the cracking stopped being one way. Voss did not flinch. Her eyes did not leave the road. 12 meters from the laid truck she stopped, knelt, and laid the probe on the asphalt at a flat angle. She pressed the tip into a hairline crack I would not have seen if I had walked over it for a year. The crack ran in a half-moon shape, a pressure plate, big one, the kind they bury under a sheet of tin and 3 inches of dust. "Plate," she said into her radio, "2 meters left of center, mark it, there will be more." There were more. She walked the next 80 meters of road on her knees. I have never in my life seen anything like it. She found a second plate at 14 meters by the wrong sound her probe made on the gravel, a hollow tap where the ground should have sat dense. She found a command wire at 23 meters by a single thread of blue plastic catching the sun where the wind had bared it. She found a third device, a daisy chain of 3 artillery shells linked by det cord under a torn rice sack, at 31 meters, and she traced the cord backward, hand over hand, to where it ran up into a culvert. If she had pulled the rice sack the wrong way, it would have taken the second and third trucks both. A round hit the road 2 feet from her left knee and threw chips of tarmac up into her face. She turned her head a quarter inch, looked at where the round had come from, looked back at the cord and kept tracing. A second round snapped over her helmet and put a divot in the door of the lead MRAP. She did not look up for that one. Her hand did not shake. I have taught young soldiers for 19 years to do what she was doing in that moment. I had never, until that morning, seen anyone do it for real. Behind us, the captain was screaming into his radio for her to pull back. The lieutenant who had laughed was on the ground next to the lead MRAP with a tourniquet on his thigh and his eyes very white. My own driver, Briggs, was praying out loud in a low monotone and did not seem to know he was doing it. Voss did not pull back. She unhooked the det cord from the first artillery shell with the patience of a woman unthreading a needle, then the second, then the third. She set each shell on its side, fuse well away from any boot path. She crawled back to the second plate, lifted the tin sheet a half-inch with the tip of her knife, slid a wedge of folded cardboard under the plate, and cut the wire that ran from it to a yellow jug buried in the shoulder of the road. The jug held 30 pounds of homemade explosive packed around a coffee can of ball bearings. She set it next to the shells. Then she went back for the first plate, the big one, and did the same. 5 down. By then the firefight on the south berm had grown teeth. A second saw had joined the first. Brass casings rang on the hoods. The smell of hot oil and cordite cut through the dust. Voss stood up. On a road she had just established, was rigged for half a kilometer, and walked, not ran, walked up to the lead MRAP. The truck's right front wheel was gone. The hull had taken the blast and held. The V had done what a V is built to do. The driver was unconscious, the gunner inside had a broken arm and a face full of glass, and the captain was outside on the road on one knee, his weapon up, trying to be useful. He had walked 20 meters on a road with 4 more devices on it, and not stepped on any of them by the kind of luck that does not repeat. Voss put her hand flat on the front of his plate carrier and pushed him gently, the way you move a child away from a stove. "Sir," she said, "step exactly where I step, do not turn your head." He stepped exactly where she stepped. She walked him back along a corridor she had marked in her head with the patience of a woman who has done this for a very long time. She put him behind the second MRAP. She did not say anything to him about the staging lot. She did not say anything to him at all. She turned around and walked back up the road and went to work on the 6th device. The 6th was the one that almost got her. It was a victim-operated switch hidden under the body of the turret gunner who had been blown clear of the laid truck. The enemy had set it there before we came. They had known the body would be a magnet for any rescuer, and they had been right. The gunner was alive. He was bleeding badly from a wound in his side, and he was making the small, terrible sound a man makes when he is trying not to scream because he knows screaming will not help. Voss reached him and saw the wire before she touched him. The wire ran from under his hip into a small black box the size of a deck of cards, and the box was wedged against his belt where any pull on his body would arm it. A second wire ran from the box down into a hairline gap in the asphalt and disappeared. She lay down flat on the road next to him and put her face close to his. I could see her lips moving but could not hear what she said. Whatever it was, the gunner stopped making that sound. His eyes locked on hers. He nodded once, very small. Then she went to work on the wire with one gloved hand under his hip and the other tracing the line back to a battery pack tucked into the seam where the tarmac met the dirt. She found the connector, turned it counterclockwise a quarter turn, watched the gunner's face, turned it another quarter, felt for the click she wanted, got it, and separated the connector. The box went dead in her palm. Then, and only then, did she lift the gunner off the device and pull him, by the drag handle on his plate carrier, 2 meters down the road to where 4 medics were waiting on the line she had marked. She came back. She finished the 6th, set the dead box in the battery pack with the rest of the gear, and walked the rest of the road to the kilometer mark and found nothing else, which meant she had found all of it. She stood up slow, the way a body stands up when it has been on its knees in a fight for 9 minutes, and she keyed her radio. Topaz 6 iron latch, route is clean, 6 down, you are clear to recover. 9 minutes. I watched the digital clock on the dashboard of our MRAP from the moment the lead truck hit to the moment her voice came back over the net. 9 minutes flat. In that 9 minutes she had found and rendered safe 6 devices on a stretch of road. My best students would have asked for 2 hours and a robot to handle, and she had done it under direct fire, and she had not raised her voice once. The captain stood up from behind our truck. He took off his helmet. He walked slow up the road to where she was standing, and he stopped 2 paces in front of her, and he did something I have not seen an officer do in a long time. He came to attention, full attention, heels together, chin up, eyes forward. Then he saluted her and he held it. She returned the salute, quiet, plain, the way you return a salute when you have decided that the man giving it is going to be worth the patience. Behind him, one by one, the line stood. The lieutenant who had laughed pulled himself off the ground with his good leg and braced on his rifle and saluted. The 2 NCOs behind him stood and saluted. The heavy-shouldered staff sergeant who had wanted the discount stood, his hand shaking at the brim of his helmet, and held the salute longer than any of them. The gunners in the turrets stopped firing for the 3 seconds it took to render honors and then went back to work. The medics around the wounded gunner straightened in their bloody gloves and rendered. Briggs, my driver, climbed up onto the hood of our truck of all places and stood at attention up there because he wanted her to see him do it. 41 men on that road by my count, and every one of them stood. She did not smile, she did not nod. She walked back down the column toward our truck the way she had walked up it, 1 foot in front of the other, and when she got to me she said, "Master Sergeant, would you mind giving me a hand with the inventory?" I gave her a hand with the inventory. That night at Carver's Bridge, the captain came into our tent. He stood in the doorway with his helmet off and his hands at his sides, and he said to her, in front of his lieutenant and his 2 NCOs and 4 of his soldiers, "Sergeant Voss, I owe you an apology. I said something at the staging lot this morning that was beneath me and beneath this uniform. I am sorry." She looked at him a long moment. Then she said, "Sir, the apology I want is the next time a tech comes out to your column you will trust the tech." He said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Then we're square." The captain left, the lieutenant lingered. He looked at the rope of scar on her jaw and at the 3 on the back of her hand, and he said very quietly, "Sergeant, where did you get those?" Voss looked up from the case she was repacking. She did not answer right away. Then she said, "First one in Tikrit, second one in Sangin, third one in a place that is still classified, off a copper jacket round that came back hot in my hand from a device I would not today have built the way it was built. The one on my jaw is from a daisy chain in Marja in 11, a chain very much like the one I took off your road this morning. I keep them because they remind me to slow down." The lieutenant said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Get some sleep, Lieutenant. Your leg will be worse tomorrow." He went. I sat with her a while longer. She did not say anything about the road or the captain or the salute. She cleaned her tools. She wiped down her probe end to end twice. She wrote 3 lines in her notebook, closed it, and put it in her cargo pocket. I retired the next month. The colonel paid for the beer and told me halfway through it that Voss had been put up for a silver star to add to the one already sealed in her file from a Helmand riverbed nobody had been allowed to write about. She did not know he had filed it. He preferred it stay that way. I taught 1 more class at the schoolhouse, my last. I told the students about Route Topaz and the wind, and the captain who had mocked her at the staging lot and stood at attention on that road in front of 40 other men, because he had finally seen the difference between the tech you draw on a wall and the tech you live because of. I told them I had stood with him. I do not teach there anymore. The schoolhouse keeps a photograph on the wall in the main classroom now, Voss in her dust-stained kit, kneeling on Route Topaz with her probe in her hand and her face turned 3/4 toward the camera. Underneath it, in small black letters, somebody has written the only caption the picture needs. 6 down, 9 minutes. The line stood. The lieutenant whose leg she saved is a captain himself now. He sent me a letter last spring on plain stationery. He had transferred to an EOD support role on his own request. He had a sergeant first class of his own now, a woman, and the day she arrived he had walked out to the staging lot and carried her green Pelican case to the briefing room himself. He hoped one day to be the kind of officer she would trust without having to be taught. I keep the letter in the drawer with my retirement orders, and on the bad mornings I take it out and read it, and I think about a hand steady on a wire under fire, and about the moment 41 men learned what they had been looking at the whole time.